Um, the Republicans love to complain about violent crime, but they don't want to talk about the cause of it, or what causes it, basically. As violent crimes rates in the U.S. have ticked upwards in recent years, um, repug politicians have blamed progressive policies and blue state lawmakers for being soft on crime, which they're not. What they have largely ignored, however, is that crimes involving guns account for a significant portion of this increase. Now, between the years of 2019 and 2020, murders rose about 30%. In 2020, more than 19,000 people were killed by gun violence, which was a 35% increase from 2019. Now, that year, guns were used in 8 out of 10 homicide cases in just the last 3 months alone. Now, we've seen back-to-back high-profile shootings at a grocery store in Buffalo, New York, an elementary school in Uvalde, Texas, and a family-friendly holiday parade in Highland Park, Illinois. Now, repugs have often downplayed mass shootings as rare events that are simply the price that we have the right to bear arms. Now, which we don't. But even while they shrug their shoulders at these tragedies, they're prone to whipping up panic about gun violence in democratic cities. After the shooting in Uvalde, Texas, Governor Greg Abbott, who's a repug, brushed off calls for tighter gun control laws in his state by claiming Chicago was worse than any given weekend. I hate to say this, but there are more people shot every weekend in Chicago than there are in schools in Texas, he falsely claimed. It should be impossible to fearmonger about a crime wave without discussing the discussing the role that guns play in this. Now, instead, conservatives have continued to the conservatards have continued to advocate for expanding gun rights, seemingly ignoring that murder rates tend to be higher in the repug-led states. Now, murder rates are an average of 40% higher in the states that Cittadini had won in 2020 than the ones he lost in, according to a study published this year by the centrist think tank Third Way. The researchers found that 8 out of the 10 states with the highest murder rates went to Trump in the last election. There's evidence that the high crime rates are linked to the lax gun laws. For example, in 2007, Missouri had repealed its permit to purchase law, the permit to purchase law, a statute that required handgun purchases to show a valid license that required a background check before the gun had to be purchased. Now, after the repeal, Missourians didn't need a background check to buy guns from sellers who weren't registered with the federal government. Now, subsequent studies indicate that repealing the permit law was linked to an increase in gun violence statewide. In 2014, the Journal of Urban Health Food at the end of the permit misspoke there. The Journal of Urban Health found that the end of the permit to purchase law was associated with a 25% increase in gun homicides in that particular state. 6 years later, the American Journal of Public Health found that getting rid of the law had been associated with a 47% increase in such crime. Conversely, back in 2015, the American Journal of Public Health found that a 1995 permit to purchase law in Connecticut had contributed to a 40% drop in gun homicides. Now, where there are more guns, there are more homicides, said Kelly Drain, who's the research director at the Gabby Giffords Law Center, to prevent gun violence. Despite this, the repug-led states are still pushing to expand gun rates. Last year alone, Tennessee passed a law allowing most adults to carry a gun without having a permit. Texas passed a similar law months later. Last month, Ohio became the 23rd state to allow its residents to carry a gun without a permit, and Indiana just became the next one to do this. In June, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled against New York's law requiring individuals to demonstrate a particular need in order to obtain a concealed carry permit, opening the door for states to further relax gun laws for more people to seek concealed carry permits. After the ruling, Maryland Governor Larry Hogan, a repug, lowered the standards to obtain a license to carry the gun. Now, people are increasingly carrying guns wherever they go, said Nick Wilson, who's the senior director for gun violence prevention at the Center for American Progress. What would normally be a verbal confrontation or fist fight is now people pulling out their guns. Now, Texas Governor Greg Abbott has continued to defend gun restrictions in the wake of a mass shooting at a Uvalde, Texas elementary school. And yeah, that fucking douchebag basically was a no-show for the grieving families in Texas who lost their kids in the Uvalde, Texas shooting. The pussy didn't even attend any speeches to be given. Now, the lax gun laws at the city our state level can affect the rest of the country, making it so that even people who live in areas with stricter laws have fewer hurdles to acquiring a firearm. Now, people can easily travel to an area that doesn't require background checks, and then they can buy a gun, and then they can return home to where they live at. When we don't regulate the legal gun market, it allows the black market to flourish, Drain said. An astonishing number of guns used in crimes are moved across state lines beforehand. Now, between the years of 2010 and 2020, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives have reported that more than 600,000 guns were used in crimes came from a different state than the one in which they were found. According to Everytown for Gun Safety, between the years of 2016 and 2020, 75% of the guns recovered across state lines came from states that didn't require background checks at all. ATF also found that 81% of guns recovered in New York in 2020 came from a different state. And the guns used in the crimes in Baltimore and Chicago, the cities that conservators routinely malign with, the majority traveled across state lines. Now, guns will flow from state to state, Wilson said, and Chicago can pass any laws as many laws as it wants, but people can just cross over to Gary, Indiana and get one. Less stringent gun laws also have coincided with record gun sales, and in 2020, Americans purchased 23 million guns alone, and approximately 40% of those guns went to first-time gun buyers who tend to be less experienced, and they have less training than people who already own the firearms. Now, with the midterm elections coming up just a few months away and the control of Congress in the balance, the conservators are sure to continue pushing this narrative that the President Joe Biden or Democratic prosecutors are to blame for crime, while conveniently omitting how much of that surge is due to the love affair with the guns. Now, if you like the video, you can give the video a like and subscribe to my channel, RBW King. You can also hit the notification bell so that you'll be notified when a new video comes out. And if you want to support my work even further, you can donate to my Patreon link, which you can find in the About section of YouTube. And for just as little as a few bucks a month, your donation can help go a long way, and thanks for listening.